Hello. Once again, you're welcome to this installment of Tissues of the Issues. This is the Parliament edition because today we dedicating the show to what happened in Ghana's Parliament over the past couple of days, where we saw members of Parliament at each other's throat, throwing tables and chairs, holding tables upside down on the floor of the house. They were literally, in fisticuffs. At some point, we even heard that a member hit at a table and touched and squeezed another member's genitals, his balls. But he has since come to deny that. It was a situation of tohubohu. It was so topsy-turvy, so chaotic, and we are wondering how members of parliament elected by constituents would descend that low on live television and be fighting over vetting of the president's appoint nominees. And we thought that was the new law. And some of us literally held our faces in our palms. We couldn't just watch it on television anymore. It marked our collective shame as a country. And we are just wondering whether all the waters in Arabia will indeed be enough to wash our shame. But today, we're going to investigate that. We also understand that a committee has been put in place to investigate the matter, even though we all saw what happened on live television. But well, that's where we are at that point. Today, the topic is an interesting one. It's about the language in Parliament. As we do recall, last week, even as the committee is still investigating the matter, Parliament is still sitting, right? And so, a member of Parliament for the Asante Twi North constituency, the Honourable Kwame Ohene Frimpong, on the floor of the House, demanded to address the House in Asante Twi. And the Speaker wanted to find out the reason for that, and he backed his claim with Standing Order 63, which permits members to use a local language on the floor. His reason is that his constituents have asked him to speak in Twi so they can relate what he says on the floor. And so the speaker permitted him, and eventually he delivered his submission in Twi, which he went on to also interpret into translate into English language. But of course, I mean, as you would expect, there were some debates on the House. People were still, some MPs also putting their own version of what is happening, whether is tenable, is feasible to have members speak in the language they please on the floor of the House. So if a member wants to speak Dagbani or Kusasi or Fanti and later translate, what kind of parliament are we going to have? It will be chaotic, right? So the topic for today, as you would have guessed, is I borrowed from 2 or 3 local languages to form a topic, and it's Madakuku. We don't speak Twi in parliament. Onu, the Onu is Ga. So Madakuku, we don't speak Asante Twi in parliament. Onu. And as you always do for us, help this channel grow by clicking on the button for notification, liking the content, leave a comment for us so we can, get to know what you think. And most importantly, please, just subscribe to this content. And as you would realize, on Tuesday the issues, what we do is that we do a synopsis of our weekly articles that are published in the newspaper. So this is a video edition of the article that we publish. And so we analyze the content in 10 or 15 minutes on this channel here. And then we deliver our verdict on what we think should be the gravamen of the arguments we've advanced, in the hope that it might answer a question or two for policymakers and duty directors to also take note. So that's what we do here. So now let's come back to the topic under discussion today. What language should we use in Parliament? Is English not enough? That is a question that we're trying to answer. Let's remember that as not quite long ago, just last year, the member of Parliament for Elembele, Emmanuel Amakofibua, also, raised these matters. He wanted to promote the Nzima language because it might go extinct. And the speaker at the time, I remember, referred the matter to the committees on finance and tourism and also on culture to look into it, to make accommodation so that members can make submissions in their local languages on the floor of the House. But that intervention, we remember it fell through. It didn't work because, let's face it, English has come to stay. English has become the lingua franca for many things in Ghana now. A newspaper is in English. I don't think we even have a newspaper at all in Ghana in a local language. Not even one newspaper in local language. Recently, of course, we've had television stations and radio stations, broadcasting in the local language. But before, it used to be a can. It used to be, English all through. So let's also understand that English language is not seeking to displace our local languages. Our local languages, are items of pride. We hold it to our chest. That's who we are. We cannot have a foreign language displace it, in terms of what we think, who we think we are. But English is a language of international commerce, a language of international diplomacy, and you have to know the language. It does not mean that you don't love your local language. You love it, but you need English, I would say, perhaps much more than you do need your local language. Because you always come back to Chi, you always come back to Eve. It's who we are. We can't contest that. But if you need to do an interview, even if you do an interview for a Chi teacher, I'm sure they will still do the interview in English anyway, right? So where do we end with that? Well, and as second speakers of the English language, we're not native speakers, we're just second speakers. We tend to think in our local languages, right? Once you want to speak English, you translate the words from English or from your local language into English in your head. And so that is why sometimes we code switch. If you remember, code switching means you change language for context and also for occasion. So sometimes when you speak in English, before you're aware, you've changed it to another language and you come back to English. You mix it like that. So that is how useful the English language has been for us. Now, let's even ask, how many of us own a Chi or a dictionary in any local language? I've never seen a Chi dictionary before. All right, I've never seen one before, Chi dictionary, but I have various versions of the English language, English dictionary, at my library. So that is, and the proponents of the local language, I think sometimes they hide behind this argument that the Asian tigers, they use their local languages, they are the only language that they know. They use it for everything, for their newspapers and even in parliament. Well, what they don't realize is that the Asian tigers, they write these languages. That is what they write. If they need to write a letter, that's what they will write. But how many of us, when was the last time that you wrote anything, anything, say a letter, for official letter, or even personal letter to your friend, in Chi or in Dagbani? When was the last time? But that's what they write it. If you go to Korea, that's what they write. I have a Korean friend. He writes that language every day. We don't get to write it. And the Asante Twi parliamentarian, look, I bet you, he had written his submissions in English language. All right? And he was just saying it in Twi. Now, let's come to even his matter too. When the speaker eventually allowed him to use the local language to speak, he actually made a mistake in his very, very first statement in Twi. There was a mistake there. He said, Yabeda Didikano, Yabeda Felicia J. Say, and then he continued. Yabeda Nasi, right? So Yabeda Nasi say, but he omitted the word say. Yabeda na ase no. He omitted the word ase, and then he rambled on. And when he was doing a translation into English, he was flawless. Okay, so what it is that I think sometimes we confuse correctness of pronunciation for fluency. Okay, the Chi language or the Dagbani language or the Nzima language, that's who we are. It's part of us. We can be prouder. All right. But once we need the English language for business, international diplomacy, for jobs, for everything, I think we have a duty to perfect it and achieve the highest proficiency in the language for what we need. And then one more thing again, the MP for Asante Twi, he says he wants to please his constituents. But I bet you he had written his posters will be in English and not in Twi. All his posters in the constituency, I'm sure the posters and even on Twi says will be in English. How were the constituents able to read that? Okay. And I also know that they would never have voted for him to become a member of parliament if he couldn't speak English at all. If he was so fantastic in Twi and couldn't speak English, I'm not too sure if I voted for him. It's the same thing happened to a member of parliament before, Amasei, whose English pronunciation was not, a bit great. Eventually, she lost her seat, right? Let's get into these issues very well. Now, English language, when did it come to us? Well, as far back as 1529, that is when the English missionaries, from England, that's when they touched down at Elmina. So that was the time that Ghanaians got into contact first with English language. And since then, the language has grown in vocabulary, it's grown in style, and also it's grown in substance and in stature too. So we have new words coming into the language every day. So even today, the word bars, which used to be a slang, is now accepted in modern English usage, right? So if you say, I was buzzed at the party, to say that I was excited, that's accepted. The word brain rot is part of the English language now. Brain rot actually means that the content on the internet that is not intellectually enriching, that content that this is not for the intellectual, it's not too challenging in terms of thinking. That is brain rot. So the language keeps improving, and they have a whole body that sits down to see which new word is coming in and how can we use it. We don't have that forever. We don't have that for Twi. We don't have that for the Gbani. We don't have a body. We know that. I know this instead of Ghana languages. But when was the last time that you heard them introduce a new word that, okay, this is a new word that has now been adapted into Twi language? You don't normally hear that. But we have a body that sits down and look at the new word that has come into the English language, try to trace its etymology and educate us on how we can use it. So that is what English means for us. Now, I live in Canada, and so that means that I get to visit the House of Commons and also the Senate. Now, in both houses, the language they use is French or English. Now, let's understand that the natives, those who actually built this country, that is the Aborigines, the First Nations, the Métis, and then the Inuit, they have their own languages too. And they built this country before eventually it got modernized into what we have today. Indeed, the word Canada came from the word, the Iroquois word Kanata, which means village. Now, these communities are not claiming that or advocating that we should use some of their languages in Parliament, even though they have reps in Parliament too. Right now, there are three important languages that are growing fast today in Canada, and one is Mandarin, Punjabi, and also Spanish. And we have reps, people in Parliament, in the Canadian Parliament, who speak Punjabi. Indeed, a leader of a party wears a turban, a Punjabi person, he wears a turban. He's not advocating that he speaks Punjabi to his community. It's English that we are all using. And sometimes I see, little footages of children born abroad who trying to speak English, Twi, or trying to speak Ga or any of the local languages, and it sounds funny and interesting. And sometimes they sound like ventriloquist, like speaking in the voice of another. It's interesting, but I'm telling you that it's great. It's pleasing to the eye, it's pleasing to the ear. But I would rather they perfected and a second language of international importance, say French or Spanish or some other languages. Eventually, Twi or Dagbani or Fante would come to them. That's who they are. They would come to possess it eventually. But for now, you need the international language to succeed. Even in Ghana, that's what you need. If you show up for an interview and you can't request to speak Twi because you're proud of your Twi language, it has to be done in English. So the verdict for today is that language is dynamic. That we do know. But for many things, language must be static. And for the Parliament of Ghana, English, I'm afraid, has become static because English is utilitarian. We need it better. We need it, and I think we write it better than Twi or better than Dagbani. I don't know the last time that you were able to write anything in Twi or in Fante or in any other language. But if I say anything in English, you're quick to write. So that has been our verdict for this week. So this has been Tissues of the Issues. Before we go, please subscribe to this content, like it, and also leave a comment so that we can grow together. Thank you very much. Next week, we're coming away with yet another exciting edition. So the topic for today is Madakuku. We don't speak Asante Twi
in Parliament. ONU. So if you Google that, or you click the link below, you can access the full article. It's a full 3-page article. I mean, full article, and you can enjoy all the arguments we've put in there. Thank you very much.